Go for it.
All right, welcome everyone to the Land Down Under Hangout. This month we read Space Opera by Catherynne and Valente. Well, let's just get straight into it. So, who wants to start? No one? Well,
Yeah.
let me start.
There you go.
I have to admit, I did not finish it. I think I've made it to page 70 and I pretty much gave up at page 50. I've read a little bit before we came in here. I got to page 70. It was too wordy for me. I like the storyline, but the language just didn't do it for me. I was getting frustrated with it, so I just ended up giving up on it, unfortunately. But we will talk about that a little bit more later. Okay, who's next? Okay, Mel. I saw your hand.
Yep, I read this last year, so I will admit that I don't remember all of the details of the plot, but I gave it 2.5 stars, and I've actually downgraded that to 2. Basically, for me, the first third worked okay, and I did finish it. But I like whimsy, but this got way whimsical, and the run-on sentences, and there was no plot, and oh my god! So yeah, no, it didn't work for me. But I could see why it would work for others, and I feel like it's probably one of those books that divides people. Like you either love it or you're not really into it.
All right, how about I'll go down to Matt next.
Hey, it's me. Yeah, I gave this 3. Which means I enjoyed it enough, but I didn't love it. For me, I actually quite liked the whole run-on sentence thing and some of the descriptions of things that she used that worked for me, except occasionally. Like I think it's maybe a bit overdone. It could have been brought back a little in terms of frequency. I found I struggled with the sort of middle third. Basically, when they sort of went away from the characters and kind of launched into almost like a history of the contest, and that went on for quite a while, a lot longer than I was expecting. And I was just like, okay, that's great, but there's a bit too much world building right in the middle of the story. I want to come back to the characters. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I was not like super impressed with the finish either. Yeah, and I thought, I thought it was predictable with what happened with Mira. Like I'm just like, okay, when's she coming back? When's she coming back? Okay, she's back. Right. So yeah, fine, but yeah, didn't love it. It was okay.
All right, Kirsten.
I quite liked it. I listened to the audiobook, so I don't know whether that made a difference. The narrator was great. I really enjoyed the narrator. But I did find the wordiness was like quite overwhelming in the audiobook because you can't go back and reread shit that went over your head, which probably was good and bad because like if it was too much, it was like, well, I'm moving on anyway. But other times I really did want to go back and reread sentences and stuff, and you couldn't really do that easily in the audiobook. I mean, I suppose you can hit back 15 seconds or whatever, but like I'm driving most of the time when I'm doing it. So I actually listened to it twice because this was the first book I read this year. And so because it was so, yeah, I don't know if word is the right word, but like convoluted maybe. I did feel like I needed to listen to it again. Otherwise I would have nothing to talk about because I wouldn't be able to remember anything. And it was easier to listen to the second time around because I knew I could remember some of the basics and I could focus more in on like the humor and the world building and everything. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. Like it very much had a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy kind of vibe for me. I did think the ending was very rushed, and I did think like they spent a lot of time on telling you all about all these races and stuff and not a lot about like actually what was going on in the main plot. But I did think it was very funny, and yeah, I quite enjoyed it.
Hey, sorry.
Kirsten.
Karina?
I also haven't finished it, not for lack of trying, just thought I was going to get through it this morning and then didn't get to. I wish it had just been a short story. Same issues as other people, couldn't deal with the run-on sentences and or yeah, we get it. Did you buy a thesaurus specifically to write this book? Stop it. A thesaurus of idioms, like, stop it. And I also just like didn't care about the little stories about the alien races. Like, can you just get back to the plot, please? Which I quite liked. Like, I'm enjoying the main story. I just wish that had just been the story. But having read The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in a Ship of Her Own Making, you know that Catherynne and Valente is just like that. Like, that book's very flowery and overwritten as well, but in a different kind of way. It doesn't go off on quite so many tangents. Whereas this is just so tangenty. It was almost infuriating. Like, just tell the story. Just let it be a quality short story instead of trying to beef it up.
Yeah. Naomi?
I'm the same. I've got 49 minutes left, and like, I'll probably go back and listen to those 49 minutes, but
ironically, we weren't listening together, but we both have the same amount of time left.
Was it
Did I
just
spoil-
at that point?
I'm
Did
the
I spoil
same. Like,
something, by the way?
I want to know what happened to Decibel Jones and the Absolute Zeros. I don't particularly care about all of these random stories that she just keeps telling. Like, I want to know a bit about them, but like, I want to know the story the way that the characters that you've introduced me to are experiencing this story. I want to learn about the alien characters from their point of view. I want to learn things about them from people telling them, not hearing a backstory about them and then hearing the story as they're living it. Like, yeah. I just want to know what happened. Like, yeah, as Catherynne said, it would have been better. I think I would have enjoyed it more as a short story. Like, it's really a 2-star book for me. I definitely like won't be giving it more than that. I feel like it could have been this definitely could have used a less is more.
Yeah.
I just feel like there was a lot in there that could have been like as an appendix or something rather than as part of the main story. Or like, if she wanted to tell stories about different alien races, like do a book of short stories where you tell stories about all the different races. I think that would have been a lot more interesting. But getting just random sort of half stories about a character that you're not really introduced to, and then you're introduced to them a bit later in the story, I'm like, I don't care about this character. Please keep going.
Yeah. Sarah?
Yeah, pretty much what everyone said. There was so much exposition for exposition's sake, and it like there was also so many themes she was trying to explore. Like, there was a whole section at the end where she started delving into like the night that Mira had died, and apparently there'd been some kind of election result, and I don't know if that was a throwback to Brexit. I don't know when this was written, but it was kind of like I was like, I don't know whether that was coming from somewhere, but it was all a bit odd. And then they were saying, you know, that Nani got deported, but it was kind of like, I was also like, wow, like that, you haven't laid anything around that. And also that's really important to explore, but you never even touched on that. Like, if that's part of Decibel Jones's character exploration, then why, like, there's just a whole lot of things like that kept coming up. I liked Douglas Adams back in the day. I'd be interested to know if I read him now whether I would find him as captivating as I did when I was younger. I don't know, like in the same way when I've had everyone in the group read Matt Ruff's first book. You know, I loved that book when I was in my late teens and early 20s. I don't know if I'd actually feel the same way about Douglas Adams books now, whether I'd go, oh man, there's just too much exposition and not enough characters, or not enough. Exactly what Naomi said. Tell the story, explain the world through the characters, and I think that was the thing that the author had with the Roadrunner. But
didn't make most of is that if you think about Douglas Adams' Hitchhikers, you've got 4 prefects serving that role of explaining the universe to Arthur Dent. And in this, that's what you had with the Roadrunner. And that was actually one of my favourite parts, was where the Roadrunner was actually explaining to everybody in the world of how everything worked in the voice of
I feel
the
like
Diner
a
woman.
lot of like bouncing to people, like the Roadrunner kind of disappeared for a little while, and then we had Clippy, and I'm like, where did the Roadrunner go? Why is the Roadrunner not hit you anymore?
Keep your Roadrunner. You've made me fall in love with your Roadrunner. Why have you removed it? You know, like.
I want to be able to picture all these different alien races, and some of them I was just like, I don't know anything about you. I don't know if you're a gaseous blob or
exactly.
protein
I couldn't
or
keep up.
a zombie. Like, I don't actually remember what you look like.
Yeah, and it's like the going on about this. I was the same. I was like the zombie one, and then there was the one that killed everybody. Those, but I couldn't remember what they were called. And then they were just like, is that what they are? Is that who Decibel Jones is? Because she'd done all this explaining these. Basically encyclopedia or Hitchhiker's Guide extracts, but I couldn't pull it back together. And actually I realized when I was listening, it was like going, none of that frickin' mattered. I'm getting this through them, and then E would come over and you know, who I also kind of liked, but they kind of didn't spend as much time with. Yeah, there was almost too many things they were exploring as well. She was exploring them. So yeah, I gave it 3 stars. I was close to giving it 2. Yeah, and I listened to the audiobook too, and part of my problem was I really didn't like the accent for Decibel Jones. It just all I could picture was fucking Russell Brand. Indian Russell Brand.
That's kind of what I was picturing
too. In my head, yeah.
But I actually thought it worked because I thought his character was kind of similar anyway. Like he's very self-absorbed and like I'm so cool and I don't actually care about anybody else. And
but it was also combined with Stan, the bus conductor from the Harry Potter thing. Like that's the other accent that was in my head. So I was just like, oh man, no, like I like Omar's, like Omar was kind of cool because I was kind of, you know, with Omar, I was like, I get you, buddy, I get you.
Yeah, me too. And he's like, did you even, did it occur to you that I have children and you've just dragged me off on this thing?
Yeah. Anyway, but the end was rushed completely. I was just like, what? Really?
Yeah.
We're done? Everything's like, there's a huge fallout from this, which could be a whole story, you know.
Oh, there's a second book coming.
Oh. Well, I mean, my thing was like, it was all about this freaking concert, and we didn't spend enough time in it. That was my other complaint. I'm like,
yeah, we heard more about all the previous concerts and not this one.
Be at this concert, be here, be at this one with the extravaganza and explain it all. And yeah, so sorry, that's all to say that, yeah, this is a 2.5 star book for me. And yeah, I just too many and exactly to what Karina said. And I've forgotten about the ors because I was so like, oh, there's 5 ands again.
Yeah, I found myself getting
me too.
The bit where I quit is when, well, quit the first time and then I read a little bit more, but is when they're doing their first gig at the pub. And she's getting to the story, and then she goes whoosh off one way. And then I'm like, are you coming back? No, whoosh right off the other way. And I'm like, it took like 6 or 7 pages before she actually passed a second. Like he said, he was about to say something to the microphone. He forgot what he was going to say. I forgot everything. And then it just went off on a tangent for like 10 pages. And I'm like,
the thing I find fascinating about that is that, like, the Night Circus does exactly that. It will stop in the middle of the story and do this whole, like, different perspective, very muchly not part of the story, even though it's a story about the major element of it all. And yet that worked. And in this, it did not work at all.
Can I just like to point out, the reason I'm putting my hand up is I didn't tell you guys, or maybe I told you this, Mel, and I reread The Night Circus just before I went into this one. In fact, I stopped in this one and went, oh, I had to take a pause. I'm too far ahead. We're gonna come back. So I'll read the rest later. So that's when I read The Night Circus. It's like the pieces where you go off to explore it They're still wonderful. I don't know that I feel like the Night Circus, she really thought about her ebbs and flows. That's what was missing in this, was where are the ebbs and flows, whereas in the Night Circus there's almost, I need to pull out for a little bit, build a little bit of world, I'll come in back here. I don't know, I think that's just much better structured.
Like she also made me care about the characters that were in those pulled out bits, whereas like
they came together.
Yeah, like we'd have this like pull out bit where we were talking about some random alien whose like whole world was destroyed and he was off joyriding and then showed up with his homework done, and I'm like, who is he? What's going on? Do I know who this character is? Should I
and what impact is it going to have on my other characters? Because in the Night Circus, any character you met them further along the line. You know, they come back in,
or you'd already met them, so they came. And so and it was actually fun to make that connection. You're like, oh, that's the person that plays this.
You're
character.
the clockmaker. Yeah.
I think it wasn't related to the rest of the story, and I just didn't care about this offshoot. It was so wordy. I just wanted to get back to the main story. It just didn't interest me at all.
And the fact of the matter is that it really should have been a novella, because if you'd taken all of those bits out, it would have been a novella length. And because it's actually quite a short book. It's my physical one, I think, had less than 300 pages.
Yeah, it's not that big.
It's a 9-hour audio book.
That's why I listened to it a second time. If it had been like 20 hours, I probably wouldn't have listened to it.
But I rewinded so goddamn much. I kept having to rewind. I'm like, is it the Keshet? Who are they? Are the Keshet the raccoons, or is it the people who is like zombies?
The Keshet are the red pandas, the time traveling red pandas.
Right, the time.
That was the thing I struggled with too. Like, and I quite enjoyed it. Like, I think I probably enjoyed it more than most of you. I found the humor was right up my alley, and I quite liked all the ors and the ands and because it just cracked me up a lot. And I found that kind of like the other flaws I was able to overlook because I enjoyed that humor so much. But I agree, like I kept going, like, and I've listened to it twice and I'm still like, the only one I remember is the 1, 2, 3. I remember the 1, 2, 3 or the 2, whatever they were called. Was it
the 3, 2, 1
or 3, 2, 1?
And I didn't make the connection until later that was the 3, 2, 1.
They're the AI,
the computer code one.
And they were like, I loved Clippy. I thought that was hilarious.
I did laugh.
I mean, I loved it, but I also it pissed me off a bit because I'm like, okay, well, this is set in the future. Like, the Queen is Queen Charlotte, which is, I think, is that what William and Kate's daughter is named?
Yeah.
So like, we're in the future, but not like distant future, but we're in the future. And I'm like, well, my kids, if I ask my kids what Clippy was, they wouldn't know. The kids at school wouldn't know what Clippy was. So why did this guy have such a visceral reaction to how fucking annoying Clippy was when he probably wasn't even born when that was a thing? But me as my age, I was like, yeah, he's right, a fucking Clippy. Like I did
the same thing. I did exactly the same thing, Kirsten, going, they wouldn't know who Clippy was.
No,
you know.
But I was still like, yeah, Clippy is a cunt. Like, fuck off, Clippy. Like, and then I felt really sorry. I felt really sorry for this race that were like, we were trying to be nice. We were trying to relate to you. We picked this AI that wouldn't be scary. Like, we decided to choose this entity because
it just helps.
It's helpful and it's not intimidating and stuff. And then
you should have chosen the male chimp because he's fantastic, and I never get annoyed at the male chimp. He's great.
I get annoyed by all the stuff it sends to me, but anyway.
What are we talking about?
MailChimp's this mail subscription thingy.
So I have not come across Clippy yet, but I'm guessing, is this the word Clippy?
Yes.
Microsoft Office Word Clippy.
He's like, can I help? And they're like,
I guess they're talking about going, I know what it is, but he wouldn't. I'm like, Clippy. Oh, Clippy.
Yeah, and there's this whole bit like he goes on this big like, it looks like you're trying to avoid being murdered. Would you like some help?
See, I would have found that entertaining if I'd gotten to that
part.
part.
It was so funny. And then the guy's like, and he's like, I thought you would like Clippy. And then the guy, what was it? Was it Ort? Ort saying Ultraviolet goes, Clippy is a cunt. And it's just like, oh my God.
So which made me just more and more endeared to Omar Ort because I liked.
I thought he had
the right attitude.
He was my favorite character.
I really, Des just.
He was self-centered. He was a
He
caricature
was a
of a
typical
rock
front man.
star.
He was a typical front man, right? And that's fine. I also just
like
the accent just drove me up the wall. That accent, I was like, oh my god, it's Stan Turnpike and fucking Russell Brand crossed. Oh, it just. Well,
yeah, he was very like the whole bit where he's like talking about this second album, and then the other guy's like, well, no, you just like did it all yourself and wouldn't let us, and because you need to be a united voice, which basically meant you stopped listening to our opinions. And I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. But yeah. But yeah, I think I must have enjoyed it a lot more than everybody else. But Matt, I don't know. I did find a lot of the things, like I agree with all the stuff you're saying, but I think the stuff that I found funny kind of overwrote that for me. The only thing I didn't like was...
I would agree with you if I hadn't been so annoyed with all of the other stuff. Like, I did find it really funny, and I liked all of the musical references and stuff that are in there, because obviously that's right up my alley. But I was just so, she'd go off on these tangents, and I'd be like, oh, for fuck's sake, just get back to the freaking story already.
Yeah, I don't mind that, like the Douglas Adams-esque wordiness, but it got too wordy for me. Like, I enjoy that a lot of the time, and the tongue-in-cheek and sarcasm and all of that sort of thing, but it got too much for me.
I'm just reflecting
just a little bit too much for me.
Yeah, I'm reflecting on the Douglas.
That it starts like that. Like the first, I don't know, it felt like 3 hours. It was probably like 20 minutes. Was her going on about what sentience is, and the whole time I'm listening to it, I'm like, what is this story? Where's the book?
It's a bit like, we're just going to talk about what the meaning of sentience is for, however long. And I'm
like this has any relevance to me right now without some sort of context.
Like, if that was somewhere in the middle of the book, I would have been like, oh, okay, I see what you're trying to get to. But, like, I don't know what you want me to do with this at the start of the story. And then it just started off first. It took me a long time to, like, get into it. I, like, stopped and started the first hour about 5 or 6 times. And I think if Karina hadn't told me to stop playing it so that we were around about the same spot, I would have just, like, smashed it all out, because I was like, this is the kind of book that I just need to finish.
Speaking of the sentience part, Elizabeth mentioned she didn't read it, but one of her friends read it, who's Aboriginal Australian. And apparently she ditched it hard because she got very upset about the whole sentience thing versus food, and given her her background as an Aboriginal Australian and their background as being viewed as fauna.
Well, I reflected on that as well, Mel, when she told us that story, and I'm like, yeah, she has every right. Her friend has every right to be really disgusted, because it was almost tone deaf, or maybe it was on the nose. I don't know, but basically the alien species is saying, here's all the animal species that you have eradicated, and one human one. And the human one was the Aboriginal Tasmanians. And it was like, because it was mentioning lions. Ones that aren't even extinct now, but then the one human one it mentioned was the Aboriginal Tasmanians. I'm like, that's really tone deaf, author. Really tone deaf. Unless you know why it's tone deaf, but then didn't bother to explain it.
Yes, that's right. like most people wouldn't get it.
You didn't explain, because you explained everything else. You didn't explain why this was, on the nose. I don't know. Yeah.
I thought that was the point of that, though. They were saying, you humans suck and you don't deserve to be called sentient, because look at the shit that you've done. Like,
yeah, but that's also condoning the entirety of human race based on the actions of some as well, because do the Aboriginal people deserve to be condoned because white people eradicated so many, if not all of them?
No, I just think it was kind of, I mean, I don't think they were trying to be offensive with that. I think they were kind of trying to show that humans have done a lot of shitty things over the time, and and like
I just feel like
how you like, and because in the context of what they said in that particular spot was when Decibel was like, this competition is barbaric, and they were like, are you fucking kidding me?
You want to talk about barbarian?
You want to talk about barbaric? Here's some shit that the human race has done.
Yeah,
that was
but
barbaric.
of all the things that was naming, it was naming animal species that it eradicated, you know, puffins, all that, and then it threw in a human species.
Yeah.
So if I was that human species, you know, if I had that biological makeup, I'd be offended. Like, okay, so you're naming lions and giraffes and the puffins, and apparently my people, because we're flora and fauna according to the government of 1954 and according to whatever government this is now. And I don't know whether that's what she was trying to do, but it just,
No, I got the impression. I didn't get that impression at all. I kind of thought that they were like, you know, it was another, like, I thought they mentioned more human. I'm sure they mentioned
they did.
A Native American group of people, and they mentioned specifically smallpox blankets, which was a thing that they did with Native American people as well, like giving the blankets with smallpox.
Specifically, like, I would happily have your diseased blankets or whatever.
Yeah.
I didn't get the impression that they were trying to lump them in with fauna and flora. I got the impression they were just trying to list a bunch of human atrocities. I'm sure at one point they mentioned Hiroshima as well.
Yeah, I don't remember that, but that doesn't mean that I wasn't not paying attention, because there were a few points where I just...
It may not have been in the same section of text, but I'm sure that there was one point where...
And you may be right, but I think the interesting thing is that considering Aboriginal people had been lumped in with fauna and fauna, to actually do that is... I get,
I'm speaking as a white person that hasn't got that history. So, like, obviously, you know, I get it that some people would be offended by that. But all I'm saying is I don't think that was the way the author intended it.
Yeah.
So
I do remember that the same part, but I think I read a part where they mentioned that with animals, and then
it's way on. Oh,
it's way on
at the end.
Yeah, because earlier in the book, I think she mentioned something like that, and it was like she was the Roadrunner was comparing, like, very lightly comparing, or like you really had to think about it to get it, or be paying attention, which I wasn't in some of this, that them saying that humans may not be sentient enough was just like them saying that people like these Aboriginal people who they viewed as flora and fauna, you thought that as well at that point. So what makes you guys any better than us?
Yeah, and they actually say that. They said, well, did you give them the chance to sing in a competition to prove that they were sentient? No, you just killed them. Like, that was kind of, and I think that was the argument they were making, was like, he was saying, this is barbaric. How dare you hinge our entire civilization, you know, how all humanity on this competition, it's barbaric. And they're like, well, you wiped out a bunch of other people and didn't even give them the chance to do this. So how is this, you know? So, yeah. I think it was supposed to illustrate, like, we like to, and I think that was the point of the mentioning all the old movies and stuff that, or I keep forgetting, is that Omar, was it?
Yeah.
You know, like his thing of, like, you watch all the movies and aliens are like this invading force that just want to kill everybody. And, like, they're kind of showing that, like, humans are sort of viewing aliens as these terrible, always going to be evil, and they want to fight us, and they're like, well, humans are not that great either.
Because our media is usually a reflection of what we do rather than So in that discussion then, do we think that this is a good way to decide sentience?
Oh no, I don't think it's supposed to be a good way. I don't think she thinks it's a good way.
No, I think the whole point of the story is that how do you define sentience, and that labeling some things as sentient and some things as not is very problematic. And I think that's the entire point of the whole novel, is like, this is no more stupid than any other way that people have said some things. And they're like talking about dolphins and orangutans and things like that, and saying, you know,
they do this. Are they sentient? You know?
Yeah. Yeah,
not by the standards that you said, but
it was a bit of a tongue-in-cheek dig at like
humans thinking
it's
we're
easy
so
for
good
us to
because
say
we're-
sentience is humanity because that's what we are and we're the ones that are in charge and we can say this is what we are and of course we're sentient, but yeah, I thought that was a lot of the point of it was they were kind of pointing out that it's a very arbitrary thing to say that, well, we say we're sentient because we're talking and communicating with each other. Well, dolphins can do that, and gorillas can learn sign language, and so are they sentient or are they not sentient? And where do we draw this line? And I thought that was quite interesting.
So did they actually, I can't remember this, sorry, like I said, it's been like a year since I read this book. Did they actually try to talk to the dolphins or something? The aliens?
No, that's I'm sure that's Hitchhikers.
That was the
isn't it Hitchhikers where they like so long and thanks for all the fish? Yeah.
Yeah, the dolphins the one. Yeah. There was some nice call outs to Douglas Adams. Yeah. The Paradox Drive or whatever it was, the Paradox Drive.
Oh, that was hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
was
this is just like an improbability drive.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like that's a nice little call out to Douglas Adams. There was a few of those which were nice.
Did anyone read the liner notes or the end papers kind of thing? Acknowledgements from the author?
I listened to it, so
I think I did.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Big shout out to Adams. And her cat died on the day she finished the book.
Oh, so sad.
Oh, speaking of which, the cat was awesome. Did you not love the cat?
Cool. The cat was
Capo,
great.
was it Capo?
Capo, yeah.
Yeah.
I did love the scene where he was like, my God, if you ever got off of Earth, everyone would be doomed because you
just kill everything.
entire universe with your hatred.
And the cat's like, yeah, but
thank God you're lazy.
Yeah.
We need to nap.
It's like, do you want me to kill him? Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, go,
like, yeah, that's fine.
I'll make this deal with you. All you have to do is give up India. Yeah, all right.
Sure. But I'm here. As long as I don't have to do anything.
Yeah. As long as I can have a nap, that would be great. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, there just wasn't enough. There wasn't enough competition. I'm like, if you're going to have a whole thing based around Eurovision.
Yeah, I wanted more of the Eurovision in my Eurovision story.
I wanted
like Univision.
Spectacular.
They spent a lot of time on the semi-finals part, which was basically just a cocktail party.
Yeah.
Like, there was a lot of time
I didn't
spent
even
on
know that was the semi-finals until after. I was very confused by that.
No one
the
did.
semi-finals is basically, we're going to let people try to take each other out ahead of the competition. And then there was a separate part where it was like, we're going to offer you something and ask you to sell out your entire country and see if you're like, this is part of your sentence test. If you're going to give up. And I did love that with the cat, where the cat's like, yeah, okay, I'll take the deal. I'm like, hopefully the cat doesn't count because, you know, you just
I thought there was going to be a turning point, honestly. I thought, oh, here's the turning point. Something's going to happen. This is like, oh, but no. I thought there was an opportunity there and didn't go for it. The end was rushed.
Yeah, I did find the end very rushed.
And I was like, I said this at the start, from the time that they said like that Mira had died, I knew like, okay, the end of this book is going to be somehow the band has to get back together to save the day. So when she's coming back, like, you know, that wasn't a surprise. And
there
then
was a time traveling red panda. I was like,
like,
so you're going to bring Mira back?
Yep.
The problem I had with that was like, they brought her back, but really,
for like 2 pages. Yeah,
she was hardly in it, and you didn't even really get any repercussions from her being brought back, or you didn't really know whether was she brought back as she was when just before she died, or does she somehow know what's happened in the interval? You don't really know anything about that. And then they're like, oh, maybe she can be the new Paradox engine, and I'm like, well, lucky her.
That sucks. Yeah.
I was doing the same thing. I was thinking that sucks. Like I was like, do you just take it back to her time, or what goes on from there? Yeah.
I did think the story with him and his guilt about what happened with her was quite interesting, though. Like, especially like Ort was like, really angry with him for laughing at her, but he laughed at her in kind of shock almost, and not like he didn't mean it the way it sort of seemed. And like I felt like that whole situation was really interesting, and she's gone off and now he's been blaming himself and the other guy's been blaming him.
Like the kind of person that doesn't take anything seriously. So
yeah.
I don't know why she would have suddenly taken his laughing about her proposing marriage so seriously. Like he seems like the kind of dude that like
just
never takes anything seriously.
And when and when they gave context to when this was all going down, I was like you all know, like they even said, like he was concerned about his own family. He was concerned about his grandmother. Like he can't think about, like you kind of would be like, are we really? Are we really talking about that? Like my family's being deported right now. And like she's thinking about her own situation. And that was the other thing. I'm like, did anyone see that coming as a foreshadowing point? Because I didn't. And I felt like it was a missed opportunity. Or it was a theme she wanted to talk about. And then it just didn't kind of, I don't know.
What theme are you talking about?
This theme of like this, maybe it's not even a theme, but it was. I felt like the author had something to talk about in terms of government and what governments get to tell. You know exactly what Kirsten said. Governments get to tell people whether they can stay or not. It's about
Yeah. Well, there was definitely that bit at the beginning where they're like, "How come you get to you're not even British?" And he's like, well, I am British.
Yeah.
But they're like, but you're not white, so we want somebody white.
I just thought there was a big racist part, absolutely. But this whole of whatever this incident was, where basically Mira was thinking, I'm going to get deported. Des is going, my whole family is in like is like to be deported. That's a huge fucking deal. I feel like it deserves more than just like it's like it overhangs everything, and then it's just this, we kind of we reveal it. But I'm like, that kind of needed to be, I don't know, more threaded into the story, but in a more actual way. Because when I think what Naomi was touching on before, he's never been a serious guy. He comes from a family of immigrants, as does Omar. So of course, when she says marry me, he's be like not just laughing because how can I take you seriously, but also I can't think about this right now, right? Like that would be also the other thing. So for her to get so offended, I also I agree. It doesn't quite make a lot of sense.
Like of all the people, like she carried him through so much stuff of him being the most, like she dragged him out of places, drunk as a skunk, she I don't know why that was the line where, that was the hill that she decided she had to die upon, as it were.
And it's interesting because they don't really spell out, did she go out driving upset and have an accidental car accident, or did she go out driving and actually deliberately commit suicide? Because it's kind of it was implied that it could have been either.
It was grey. She was fueled on a lot of looked like they were fueled on a lot of drugs and booze, from what I can remember.
Yeah, they did mention something about the minibar, I'm sure, at that point.
Yeah, they had consumed everything in the minibar without tasting it. Yeah. I just, whatever was happening in that scene, I felt deserved more, because it was quite a politically charged scene when you think about it, and also because we'd been, a character that I actually really did like, which was his nani, Mr. Luna of the Tunes, which I loved. So Luna of the Tunes. Introduced him to the Roadrunner, and he realized he's like there was so much in there, and then he was very concerned and trying, like he had said in the text, or I heard in the text, he'd been trying to get hold of his grandmother constantly, and she was already being deported out, like she was already being processed.
She wasn't answering the phone, and he'd been trying to call.
And the truth was, according to the narrator, that's because she was being processed. So that's why I find this whole, everything that went down, and to Naomi's point, like asking someone to marry you in this situation where you're watching your country being ripped apart, it is kind of hard to take that seriously and not laugh out of, out of
Yeah, it's like that thing where people sometimes like laugh at a funeral because they're like overwhelmed with emotion and they can't, and they're not actually.
You can't process.
Yeah, they're not laughing because they think it's funny. It's like it's just this. Your brain. It's like a documented thing where people are like, my brain is telling me that I should not do this, and so I'm like, I just can't. Like it happens because.
But it's also
I'm
there's
like
almost so
overwhelmed.
much stuff going on that you kind of like. I think from what I can understand is like this happens all the time with grief. You're so it's so much going on. It's so much that you almost see something ridiculous in this despair and depression and melancholy. It's almost ridiculous, and so that's what makes you laugh. You're like, oh my God, really? This is the human struggle?
Yeah, and also like that all made sense to me, but I kind of was disappointed that at the end she comes back, she plays in the band, and then then it ends.
That's
and it's
it.
like, well, you didn't get any repercussion from
we didn't
her
get
coming back, and her there was no reunion scene. There was no
reunion discussion scene.
Yeah.
Like,
I really wanted that. I wanted her to say, look, I get it. I understand why you laughed, and I was in a bad place, and like, I get
between Ort and Des, did they talk about things? Because it felt to me there was a whole lot of things that didn't get.
No, I got the impression that she was like the glue that held them together, and when she was gone, Ort was blaming Decibel, and he they just it seemed like they kind of had a three-way relationship going on, but when she was gone, the two guys just couldn't, they were blaming each other, and they were
Yeah, and there was a good scene on the ship where Ort and Des were had an all-out fight, and where Ort finally said, "I blame you. I've always blamed you." Right? Great. Wow. Good. Wow. Emotional stuff. Yes. Good shit. Good in there. And then nothing happened at the end, and nobody discussed it.
Yeah. That was the biggest issue I had with the book, was that the ending felt like it just ended and didn't tie up things and was very rushed.
I want a scene between Ort and Des to discuss how it all went. I want a discussion between Des and Mira about that night. I even want a chat between Des and the freaking Roadrunner about their child. Like, none of that happened.
Yeah. That never kind of, And I did find too.
Yeah, sorry, for those that didn't finish the book, he has a half alien baby
in the middle of the concert at the end that comes out of his mouth.
Nothing like childbirth to help you win the day.
That fixed his lack of being able to sing that was happened because he was having sex with some other alien that
had
and he was
lots
like,
of
how
hair.
do you guys do it in your alien race? And they're like, we brush each other's hair. And he's like,
yeah, that was weird.
Okay.
Then we share our feelings.
Yeah, literally.
And he's like, okay, let's share our feelings. And he tells all his feelings, and then the alien's like, no, we actually
externalize them.
They have this
physically.
it's like a kidney stone. They're feeling. But yes. Anyway.
You guys are making me less and less want to finish this book.
There's not much to finish.
There's got so little to go.
I just got up to the bit where, that's before that.
I did feel like actually
in the bar.
If you've got 50 minutes left like I do, you've already hit that scene.
Oh, and I was not listening.
Yep.
I actually felt like one of the most realistic parts was the fact that he was just going around like, how you have sex.
Yep.
Yeah. That was one of the things I really liked about the book, was that they weren't all like Star Trek aliens where everyone kind of is human just with something slightly different to human. Like, the aliens were very alien. All the alien races were very different to each other, and I thought that was really quite good. Like, they've got inventive kind of ideas for alien races. And
it did bother me that all the alien races were some sort of analog of animal or shape of something on Earth. Like, oh, that's a red panda, and oh, that guy's an elephant with extra tusks, and that guy is, like, everything seemed to be some sort of analog, like nothing.
What about the Ursulas?
Which ones
in
were
the
they?
movie. That was the clouds of gas that were like.
Oh, and the
Clouds of
moonbeam.
gas.
Yeah,
Everything
yeah.
that was a physical body, like most of them were.
But I think that's more like that's a natural thing where humans would be like, I'm going to pick the things closest to what's a thing I know and name it that, because it was kind of told from the human sort of perspective.
And that's what humans do. They definitely do that.
And it's a
because
storytelling technique as well to help
Help you
form a
visualize it.
yeah.
Well, they talked about the guy with the knife, the face knives, but then I'm sure that Decibel met one of them, but I don't actually know what analog he was giving them.
Was it like a rhinoceros with knives or something? No, it was crocodile and knife. I can't even remember.
When she was doing like the background, like talking about what was happening in the past, she didn't actually use the same analog. So I don't know what characters that Decibel was meeting was the characters that she had already spoken about their race. So
Yeah, I did find that hard. Like I kept forgetting which one was which.
Their descriptions were
names,
unique, but the
the
names
descriptions and the names, I was like, the only one I remember was the 3-2-1, because I'm like, oh well, that makes sense that the computer race would be numbers.
The other one I can remember because Keshet sounds quite nice, and apparently it's
which one was the virus? I thought that was really interesting that one of the races was a virus.
Yeah, and there was a whole.
Was that the Vulpret?
One of them.
Yeah, the Vulpret, who sound like some kind of Danish treat you get at like IKEA. I'll have a Vulpret, please, and a coffee.
It's $2.
$2 too much.
Yes, because you'll always be disappointed.
Oh, am I the only one who likes IKEA food? I'll have the Swedish meatballs and that jam that comes with it. Yes, please.
That's not too bad, but that's about it. Like anytime you have like one of their biscuits or something on those lines, you're just like.
I don't think we've ever tried one of the biscuits.
No, I always
Do you mean like the cinnamony biscuits?
I don't remember. I just remember trying some things and being like, yeah, I think I'll stick to the meatballs.
I don't know if I've ever had meatballs. I don't mind meatballs. People are really big into the hot dogs. Not my thing.
Yeah, the
boiled sausage.
No, and I wouldn't rave about the meatballs the way some people do. I just find them probably the most palatable of what's available.
I presume they're raving about them because they're cheap.
Yeah, that's primarily.
Space opera character
Yeah,
name.
so we can get back from the Vulpret eating extravaganza to space
No,
opera.
well, when you Google space opera character names, it comes up with movies that are space operas, not
not the novel.
So
Might have to put a name in there or something. It might help.
I tried to find some fan
art
books as well to see what people had drawn, because I always love that, and there's not that many. I don't know if it's like you said, because this space opera is not like it's already a genre.
I don't think it has quite that level of a following as part of the problem.
No. I do, but I find that I often do find that useful. Is looking at fan art to help me, like, what's the difference between these? Yeah, the virus. Who was there was the one with the hair who was kind of wanted to be self-deprecating, but they actually thought they were amazing.
Oh, I thought that was great.
That's right. Yeah.
See, I love that where they're like the whole race is like, yeah, when you're supposed to say terrible things about yourself, and she's like, when that was the one they had sex with, and she's like, tell me something dirty, and he's like, you're beautiful, and he's like, and she's like,
you're a very good person.
yeah, you talk dirty to me. Yeah, I thought that was great. Oh dear.
Their Wikipedia page is like got nothing in it, because I was like trying to work out what the race names were, and I've got nothing.
No, I have exactly the same.
And this is why I need your book to have some sort of dictionary in the back of it, so I can work out what characters were what and who was who.
Yeah.
Because I have, God no idea about who was the knife-faced dude, and who was the Colosseum person, and who was the guy that tried to crush Decibel's hand because he thought that he was
He was the guitarist, and he's like, I'm just a singer. Why are you crushing my hands?
Right? He was made
the stone guy.
All I could think was the rock biter from Neverending Story. I kept thinking that's who he's shaking hands with. I don't know if you guys know.
I loved the guy behind the bar too. You know when he's trying to buy a drink?
I don't know how to make that.
I don't know what that is.
It's like, I'll have a Cosmo. And he's like bursting into tears.
Tea.
Yeah.
I made you tea.
How do I make it neat? How do I make it whiskey? And how do I make it neat? Let's do something easier.
I want a gin and tonic fountain though.
Yeah, me too.
Nothing works. They knew nothing.
About E, who was the Keshet Panda, the pilot of the ship, who there was not enough of, by the way.
No.
I listened to the audiobook, and I thought I'd accidentally rewound, because when I rewind on my audiobooks or my podcasts, it makes the same like kind of yes, no, yes, and go. As this, I was like, holy shit, this is rewinding podcast personificated as a sentient being. Yes, no, but maybe. Does anyone else get that when they rewind?
I don't usually rewind because I listen mostly when I'm driving, and I don't like touching stuff. Like,
do you not have it plugged into your steering wheel?
I've found when I click the back button on my steering wheel, it takes me back an entire chapter. So
it's not a skip back
touching
that one.
it.
Okay.
No, I don't have fast forward buttons and rewind. It's just
so if I miss something, I'm like, I'll just have to figure out what I missed. Like sometimes I zone out. Like sometimes I'll be focusing on, like if I'm driving and something's going on the road that takes my attention more than it normally does. If I'm like, what's this car doing? And I might just, I'll find I tune out of what I'm listening to, and I'll be like, what the hell were they talking about? Oh, well, I'll figure it out. Like I'll just keep listening.
Yeah.
And
no, I rewind all the time.
If it was something important, the author will come back to it. It'll be fine.
Yeah, I rewind all the time, and it's normally because my car gets chatty about school zones. And I have to be like, I know it's a fucking school zone, and you've spoken over the top of my thing 3 times now. So I enjoy rewinding. But sometimes I get in and I go, I can't remember where I was up to, so I like to rewind like a minute just to kind of catch up. So I do I think that's 4 rewinds. So sometimes I get that, or often what happens is my car can't keep up with what I've put in, and so I'll press it. And then suddenly the car goes, oh yeah, we're rewinding, and then go back, and that's when I have the E Panda talking to me. Yes, no, but yes, time to drink, yes.
I quite liked that too, though. I liked that was the explanation was like it's in multiple timelines, so it's like saying all the different versions of what it would have said. And then there was that bit where it was like, you're not doing that thing where you say all the stuff. And he's like, no, this is the only timeline where I bumped the table and now my camera went. I hit the table out of like enthusiasm and now my camera just disappeared. Stop looking at me if you get dizzy. I just had it sitting good too, and it was like, nope. Fixed.
Huzzah.
Huzzah. I did a shit job of putting my nail polish on.
So overall, it seems like we all felt fairly similar about the book.
Except me.
Oh, to varying degrees. I'm sure I would have enjoyed the story if it weren't so wordy.
I agreed with a lot of the stuff, like a lot of the criticisms you guys had, I agree with. I just enjoyed the humour so much that it kind of overrode the rest of it for me.
Yeah. I think that I felt the same in the first third. Like in the first third, I was having a good time with all the humour and stuff along those lines. I just got annoyed after a while.
Yeah. I liked the Roadrunner, and then that was the most annoying thing. I liked the Roadrunner. I liked the Panda, and then it just disappeared. And also, I was really looking forward to, like I do with Eurovision, the extravaganza of fucking
Yes.
Eurovision.
Yeah, I was
no-
disappointed that was kind of glossed over too. Like,
Yeah.
it's like they had their bit and they didn't really mention what any of the others did.
I'm like,
The sad thing too about that is that the whole point, the reason this story came about was that she was actually challenged to write a Eurovision in space story, and that's how she ended up with this story in the first place. Like, but where's the Eurovision bit?
I felt like I was missing the Eurovision bit for the
That
Eurovision
makes sense.
story.
So she's not a Eurovision fan from years gone by. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is
Because we're
now.
with fucking Bonnie Tyler.
And just to put into perspective, because I think it was asked before, I don't know when she wrote this. So it came out last year, so it would have probably been written in 2018, maybe 2017 if she started sooner.
But it was set later. So
Yeah.
it wasn't, the election that they were talking about wasn't Brexit, because
I got
No,
the feeling
but
it
I
was
feel
like
like I feel like that.
2030s.
an
But
influence.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. Brexit happened in 2016. I feel like it would have influenced her.
Yeah.
A lot of those things that she was talking about and that sort of stuff. So
It was after Princess Charlotte was born.
Yes.
So-
She's not that old.
So obviously,
name.
in
No, that's what I was like. She's really little, so it's obviously set a ways in the future. Like, but
Okay.
not like 100 years or anything.
No,
But
20 or 30.
and obviously, the elder brother did not make it, or he abdicated.
maybe. Who knows?
Yeah.
maybe
Or
maybe
the
they just
siblings
said
all
to
got
the
together and
children.
said, "Who wants the job?"
Yes,
Yeah.
that's exactly what I was thinking.
No,
Not my younger
I
brother.
wouldn't blame them all for saying
out.
shove it. Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
can't
if you
blame
can
them for
leave,
that.
I can't blame him. So I think we're done.
Yeah, I think
I
we're
think so.
done.
Solid 3-star, maybe a little below, maybe above, depending on who, if you're Kirsten.
I gave it 3.
I think I gave it 4.
Yeah,
I
you
think
did
I gave it
actually.
4.
2 to 4 star book.
Let's average it.
Somewhere on a sliding scale.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you, anybody who watched all the way through this. Good night.
Bye.